latches right onto him like something out of Alien, and it's stupid. In 2005, Little Brown and Company took a chance on an unknown author who had written her first novel, a vampire romance called Twilight. And holy shit, did it pay off! On August 4th, 2020, Midnight Sun, a rewrite of the original Twilight from Edward Cullen's perspective, hit the shelves. One thing to bear in mind, this isn't exactly Meyer's first Twilight rewrite. Can I call them Twilights? I'm calling them Twilights. She had intended to write and publish Midnight Sun a lot earlier. Like, a lot earlier. Like 2008. But a draft got leaked and the project went on hiatus until now. But that didn't stop Meyer from other Twilights. In March of 2010, Twilight the Graphic Novel Volume 1 was made available, and Volume 2 was later available in October 2011. Then, in October of 2015, Meyer wrote Life and Death, in honor of Twilight's 10-year anniversary. Life and Death itself was a gender-bent rendition of Twilight where, you guessed it, the vampire is the girl, and the human is a boy. Fun fact about publishers! They're not going to bother publishing things that they don't believe are going to make money. So, based on that knowledge alone, we know that these books do well on the market. So based on that knowledge, we know people must like these books, specifically the first Twilight book. But why? There are 101 arguments for why Twilight is actually creepy and not romantic. Edward is basically an old man stalking this young girl and watching her sleep at night. He's cagey and borderline rude to her for about half of the book. He tries to gaslight her into thinking she's crazy until she finally calls him out as being something non-human, and suddenly he's like, "Oh, well, you got me there." You can ask a fan of Twilight why they enjoy it. And the usual answer is that it's so romantic, but the only reason it's even kinda romantic is because Bella's into it. And that's not very romantic. It's like asking an adolescent boy why it's funny to draw dicks everywhere. The standard answer is that, it's just funny. And I mean, it's really not. If you press for more information about why it's humorous, you're probably not going to get a very good answer. But there's always a reason for something. So that brings us back to the question, what is the appeal of Twilight? How did this do so well that it got 3 sequels, 5 films, 1 spin-off, an official guide, and 3 rewrites? I think it boils down to 2 key components. It's emotion-driven, and it's easy to read. Let's explore this further. The biggest force that drives the plot for about 2/3 of the book isn't what the main character Bella does, or what things are done to her. It's her reactions to that environment and the characters around her. And since such a good chunk of the book is spent inside Bella's head, it's easy to slip into the story and make yourself the object of a gorgeous vampire hunk's affection. I'm not saying emotion-driven writing is anything new, and I'm certainly not disparaging it. It's really common in the majority of teen books and romance novels. Go ahead. Go to a middle school scholastic book fair or your neighbor's yard sale full of whatever's left of their great Aunt Mary's estate. Pick up 5 books and at least 4 of them will just be raw, pent-up emotion marketed as an adventure. And emotionally driven writing isn't just for teenage girls and bored housewives. Action and horror movies marketed to men tend to not have any real substance, and they're typically described as a fun ride or an adrenaline shot. It doesn't have to have a lesson or a deeper meaning or even be something that makes you go, oh, as you're lying awake at night. Sometimes it's just fun for what it was, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Honestly, I think there's something to be said for it. Meyer wrote a 498-page book where basically nothing happens for the first 372 pages. And yet it grips you the whole time. Oh, you want proof? Okay, here's a summary of the whole book prior to the baseball game. Okay, so Bella moves to Forks, and the people she meets are just vehicles for helping her learn about the Cullen family. And then Edward saves her from a car wreck, and he acts really weird about it. And okay, side note... This is legitimately my favorite part of the whole book. Okay, so Tyler's van is like just skidding on black ice and it's about to kill her. And Edward uses like his vampire speed to put himself in front of the van. And she's just like, how did you do that? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was standing next to you the whole time. And she's like, yeah, BS, you were like 4 cars away. And he's like, nuh-uh. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, you got me there. And she's just like, how did you do that? And he's just like, I'll tell you later, because I need to get out of this conversation. And she's like, oh, okay. And so later she's like, hey, you promised that you'd tell me how you did it. And he's like, I'm not gonna tell you. And she's like, why? And he's just like, f you, that's why not. And it's so stupid and I love it so much. It's so dramatic. I love Edward so much. He's so dramatic. I love it. Okay. So, he saves her from the car wreck. He saves her from the car wreck, and so then she goes to La Push and she learns about vampire legends from Jacob. Then she almost gets gang raped, but Edward saves her and she calls him out as being a vampire. And then they decide they're in love. And right there, the only real action-based events are the car wreck and the near gang rape. And for 370 pages, that's really not a lot. Frankly, those aren't even the most memorable parts of the book. The scenes that grip you are the emotional charges of anticipation to see Edward in the meadow, or when she wakes up in the morning and she just leaps into his arms. And okay, I'm willing to admit I was a little obsessed with Twilight when I was in high school. And for the purpose of this video, I reread it, and it truly did keep my attention the whole time. I won't pretend it was a chore to read or that I even hated it the whole time, because honestly, I didn't. It was a fun ride, and I enjoyed it for what it was. And as I read, I realized what keeps you locked into the story and distracted from the poor writing and bad characterization. You locked into the story and distracted from the poor writing and bad characterization is the sexual tension. Much like a bad relationship, nothing keeps the rose-colored glasses on quite like the sweet, sweet promise of a clitoral tingling orgasm. So, as a direct result, you don't have to pay that much attention to the plot of the book or the prose of the writer, and frankly, there isn't very much consequence in not paying that much attention because you're waterboarded with the big points like Bella initially hates Forks, or she's obsessed with Edward. In fact, it's kinda dangerous to pay too close attention to the book, or else you start seeing the holes in it, like how Bella grew up in Phoenix, but apparently doesn't have any friends from Phoenix to correspond with. Or how the environment itself reflects Bella's feelings, and her feelings reflect the environment, and together they create an infinity mirror until we get to the point where something needs to happen, so somebody needs to do something totally out of character in order to propel the story forward. Exhibit A. In the car, Bella accuses Edward of being a vampire, and he just admits it. He's been spending the whole time trying to hide what he is from her. In an earlier scene, she's trying to guess what he is, and he won't even give a hint. The fact that he's just admitting it now doesn't make sense. It would be more in character for him to lie. Exhibit B. When they kiss for the very first time, Bella is suddenly overwhelmed with amazing desire and latches right onto him like something out of Alien, and it's stupid because she knows that he is fighting the urge not to murder her. And up through that point in the book, Bella is supposed to be very grown up, very rational, very smart, or at least that's the image that we're supposed to have of her. And I mean, I've been caught up in a couple of freaking hot smooches myself, but this reaction, given the surrounding context, doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, the bulk of the book is just Bella and Edward mooning over each other, and then the other vampires show up and they want to eat Bella, so action actually drives the story for like 10 pages before reverting back to being emotionally driven. Ultimately, It's clear that Stephenie Meyer has tapped into a lucrative vein of prepubescent fantasy, and that's why every Twilight incarnation does so well. We love this kind of trash the same way we love Reddit threads, reality TV, YouTube, drama channels, rom-coms, action movies, and parodies. They're different in their own respect, but similar enough to evoke comfort, nostalgia, or even just that feeling of loving to hate something. And basically, the others do so well because Twilight did well. The fact that it did so well proves that it speaks to the horny, rebellious, misunderstood teenager inside, and it does so unapologetically. This is why Twilight was successful, and why Midnight Sun will be yet another cash cow on the Twilight farm. But it's also why, despite its flaws, the fans really don't mind. I'm almost educated, and you have just bared witness to my first video. Let us pray that they only get better. For real though, let me know what you thought in the comments, drop a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more content. Plus, it would really help me out in the YouTube algorithm if you did. Thanks!